Hold hands and close your eyes. It's midnight, and you're listening to the Ghost Story Guys. Welcome to the Ghost Story Guys. I'm Brennan Storr.
I'm Ian Gibbs.
And this is a show where we talk about spooks, specters, and all the other things watching us from the shadows beyond the campfire. Some conversations only make sense after the sun is set, and this is most definitely one. Thank you for tuning in. This is episode 34. And we're coming to you from that tiny mountain cabin you dream about but can never quite reach. How you doing, Ian?
I'm doing great, Brennan. How are you?
I'm good. I got to play adult the other day when I helped you shop for a condo.
You did.
That was novel, since I will never be able to afford to buy in this market. That was a fun experience to get to have.
It was, and it was a very nice condo.
It was.
Sadly, it wasn't to be, as someone snatched it up
Yeah.
from under me, but
It's a very competitive market.
I will live to fight another day. It'll happen when it needs to happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I remember we had a brief period where we thought we were going to buy a condo.
Right.
And that delusion was stripped away quickly.
And what stripped it away?
Being broke.
That would do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I hear it.
Yeah.
And I need to get my financing in order. The
Of
money
course.
is there. It's just not
There.
organized and freed up and all those good things. So I need to, I got work to do.
Yeah.
But I think what I realized was I need to not go and look at condos until all those ducks are in a row.
Oh, sure, because you get attached.
It's heartbreaking.
And I mean, that place did have that really neat pet cemetery looking thing on the third floor. Like they raided all the plants from a Chinese restaurant.
Yeah.
And then set them up at a sacrificial altar.
Yeah, in a hallway that really had no purpose.
That was strange.
It was.
Yeah. Nice. I mean, nice apartment.
Yeah.
But a little worried about the fact that they may all be part of some kind of death cult.
Some kind of plastic plant cult.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, your first day in there, they knock on the door. Hey, we're going to go cut up a virgin in the back. You want dibsies?
I'm hoping no.
Oh,
I'm hoping no. How was your week?
my week was, how was my week? My week was pretty quiet.
Oh, okay.
Nothing real exciting going on, just prepping for the summer camp episode.
Yes.
I got it in my head I was going to watch all these summer camp movies. And it turns out they're actually quite depressing.
And pretty terrible.
Yeah, well, I can deal with that. I mean, I grew up watching terrible movies. That's how I spent my high school years instead of dating. But
Really paid off.
I think so. You. I have really strong forearms now.
Oh, okay. Great. That's disturbing.
So I watched Meatballs,
Right.
which was Bill Murray's first starring role. And we should preface this by saying the show is about summer camps.
Right. That's a good thing. Rather than we just sort of start ripping on something that really has no.
So
crock pots. Yeah.
Again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, this show is about summer camps. And so
Yep.
I thought I'm going to start watching all these summer camp movies. Like, again, Meatballs, Heavyweight. But I remember them being more fun than they are. Because, again, I watched Meatballs and I was so depressed afterwards.
What made it depressing?
It's kind of like watching porn. You're watching people other than you have a real good time.
Yeah.
This is not for me.
No. I get that.
Yeah. But anyways, so there was one that just killed me. The plot was such that I just thought this can't be real, but it is. It is the second sequel to Meatballs,
Right.
Meatballs 3,
Right.
Summer Job.
Yeah.
And it is about a porn star whose ghost returns to Earth to help a nerd lose his virginity.
Kind of like Heaven Can Wait, but with a porn angle?
Yeah, like Heaven Can Wait, but mediocre in every way.
Yes.
And failing even at being sexy.
Wow.
It was, I kind of, it's hard to find, shock, but I managed to find a copy on YouTube. And so I'm flipping through, and it's terrible. It's not funny. It's not sexy. It's again, it's terrible in every way. However, it still lead me to a fun situation. And by fun, I mean horrible. A public library has opened up a new branch in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
And it's a great place to work because it's very bright. You know, I can work remotely. So I was in there, opened my laptop, and I had previously been watching Meatballs 3 Summer Job.
Yes.
And for some reason, the YouTube window was sort of a dark setting. So instead of being white YouTube colors, it was dark. And it looked like certain adult video websites my friends have told me about.
Yeah, I've heard about them.
Yes. So I sat down, opened up my laptop, and in the public library, people sat right behind me. It looked like I was watching pornography.
Oh, boy.
Aren't
you used to that by now?
It's usually Starbucks, though.
Oh, right.
It's different, not the library. There are rules.
Yeah.
Funny you say that, though. I was talking to this dude I know at the Starbucks, and they actually have had to kick guys out for masturbating.
What?
Yes.
How would you be that comfortable in a public space that you're like, yeah, I can whip it out.
I hope I never know.
Wow.
Yep, that's got nothing to do with ghosts, folks. This is just reminding you that the world can be a horrible place.
No kidding.
A horrible, gross place.
Gross.
Yep.
Ugh.
Well, on that note, as we were saying before, this episode is about haunting of summer camps.
Mm-hmm.
And this actually turned out to be a lot more fun. Not a lot more fun than I expected. Because when you brought it up, I thought, no, that sounds cool. But I wasn't expecting how unique a flavor the camp stories would have.
Yeah.
And so I think it's going to be a long episode too. So I think
So for people listening, that's either a good thing or a bad thing.
yeah, or they're hurling their phones into the sea.
On how they feel about us.
Ordering a new one. And in order to give the episode that summer camp vibe, and because Florida has come up a few times lately,
Yes.
the song we're going to be featuring today is called "If I Ever Get Out of Florida," and that's by the artist Just Fern, who is out of Pittsburgh. I found Fern actually when I was putting together a Pittsburgh show for my radio show, Largely
Right,
the Truth. And her new album, Feminology, just came out on Bandcamp. You can find her at justfern.bandcamp.com. And it's such a fun album.
Cool.
For an independent, or for anyone, it's a fun album. But especially when you realize this is an independent artist, it's just a ton of fun. And I think you guys are going to like the song. So when we come back from the break, The Haunting of Summer Camp.
There's a broken limo in the parking lot, and there's dents and rust and the holes say it's been shot. And with the way the neon sunshine fades the view, you'd think this place closed in 1982. If I ever get out of Florida, I'm coming back for you. There's a swamp reclaiming all our stolen land. It's making its way for our Wi-Fi and the van. No dust settles, no new flowers grow. This pretty pink hotel has got to close. And if I ever get out of Florida, I'm going home.
Welcome back. As we said before the break, this episode is about the hauntings of summer camp.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to say, I thought summer camp was kind of a done thing. You know, again, because I remember Meatballs and I remember all those movies.
Yeah.
And I sort of thought it had come and gone. But as I learned, there are still something like 10,000 left in North America.
Yeah.
And they're becoming more specialized.
And that's why they're surviving.
Right.
Because there's been a number here on Vancouver Island that have shut down, including the one I used to work with.
Really?
Yeah, over the years, because they aren't specialized enough.
Oh.
And you need money to
Of
become
course.
specialized.
Of
So
course.
that's the problem. So the general religious ones run by churches, those are all suffering. Because there's no money to improve them. They're at least 50 or 60 years old.
Right.
They're not able to specialize.
And religion itself, and we've talked about this before,
Right.
religion itself is on the decline.
Organized religion is shutting itself
I
down.
mean, you were saying that's one of the reasons you left the church.
Yeah.
Is because they refused to change.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was no adaptation. It was minor changes like, well, if we get better copy,
Right.
more people will attend. And it's like, if we paint the deckchairs yellow, the Titanic is still sinking.
Right.
So, yeah, it's not going to make a big difference.
Yeah, no, I was really surprised. And it's kind of funny because in Meatballs, and again, Meatballs is from
I love that this is your cultural reference.
But it's the only summer camp movie I watched. It's the only one I can handle. I'm a delicate flower.
Yeah.
But so in Meatballs, there's a story of the poor struggling summer camp.
Yeah.
And across the lake is the wealthy summer camp.
Absolutely.
Camp Mohawk.
Absolutely.
With a lot of really offensive Native American stereotypes.
Yes.
You know, they're doing a war dance as part of their cheer.
Oh, my
They've
Lord.
got headdress. Oh, it's bad.
Not
It's
good.
bad. Mind you, I remember being in England in 2011. We went to the Christmas Panto. We were there for Christmas.
Oh, Christmas pantos are completely racist and off.
They did.
No, they're horrible.
Peter Pan.
Yeah, they do Peter Pan or Cinderella.
And they
it's,
came out doing the thing with like I'm not going to do it, but They had literally had feather headdresses,
Yeah.
and they were doing that thing where they make the war cry with the hand over their mouths.
Yeah.
I was shocked.
No,
I was looking around waiting for someone to kick in the door, and then I realized, no, I'm in England.
Yeah.
No one here cares.
No one cares.
Oh.
I think because we live amongst that culture.
Yeah, of
to
course.
them, it's like Aborigines in Australia.
It's an exotic
It has
thing.
nothing to do with
Of
them.
course, yeah.
Yeah.
But anyways, getting back to Camp Mohawk.
And they're colonial pieces of garbage.
Yeah,
That's
that
the
too.
other
Yeah,
reason.
that too. Yeah.
They're used to oppressing culture. So
It's very true.
Not really a big deal. I can say that. I'm from there. I was born there. So.
My wife's English.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's what we do best.
It's true. Anyways, in the film, the poor Camp Mohawk, and in the beginning, there is a newsman, because this was apparently news in 1979, interviewing the people from Camp Mohawk, and they're talking about how it's a premier camp at $1,000 a week, and they have butlers and all this crap. And then when I was reading about modern summer camps, some of the literature that Luke provided, $1,000 a week is like a minimum.
Yeah, no, that's a bargain now.
Yeah, for $1,000, you get to go to a house made of popsicle sticks.
Yeah,
where bears regularly attack.
Yeah, and they feed you once in a while.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's $1,000 a week because it's on a lake.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the last of the lake's not privately owned. Mm-hmm. But no, so I thought it was a fading out thing. But yeah, apparently more specialized camps and space camp and math camp and
drama camp and everything. Now, did you go to camp as a kid?
No, we didn't have a lot of money when I was a kid, so we didn't.
Well, you're already living in the wilderness.
Yeah, very true. Very true. White trash wonderland that it was. But how about you? Did you go to camp?
I didn't go to camp as a camper. Where I lived in Alberta, the Anglican church, who I was affiliated with at the time, would rent a camp for 2 weeks of the summer, and we would do a junior camp and a senior camp, and I went as staff. So I went to be a counselor. I got there. I'd learned guitar 2 weeks earlier, and I got there, and they were like, "Oh, you brought a guitar? You're the music guy." And I was like, "Damn!" So that was it. And then it wasn't until and it wasn't until I started working for the Anglican Church here that I was then in charge of helping out with like hiring people for camp and running camp. I was on the board.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I would also do the teen camp. I would be the chaplain for teen camp. At the end of the summer.
Right.
But the camp was given to them by an old British guy.
Of course.
And his sister. And they lived on Thetis Island.
Who were uncomfortably close, as that seems to happen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because all the men were killed during World War II. Anyway, there's no proof that happened here.
No, fair enough.
Just two older people living in a home together alone in a one-bedroom house. No, I'm kidding. It wasn't. It wasn't. So they had this beautiful house. They donated the house, and I think it's almost 100 acres of land on Thetis Island.
Holy smokes.
To the Anglican Church. 1940s, they put a bunch of cabins, and by cabins I mean like not as good as a garden shack.
Oh wow!
No power, no water, nothing.
Right.
And the Anglicans ran that as a summer camp for years, right up until I think it was 2011. They realized they couldn't sustain it anymore. The water system needed work. The buildings were falling down. All these things. So they were one of the casualties, and they're not alone. Of church camps specifically that have shut down throughout BC in the last 15 years.
Huh.
Yeah. But it was an interesting place because a lot of the buildings that we used for like the craft building or the chapel or they were built there by the people who donated the lands,
right.
The little outbuildings. So they had a definite feel to them.
What kind of feeling?
The one building, I really liked it. I felt very at home there. It looked out onto the water because it's right on the coast, of course. Right. And I really liked it, but there were other buildings I was not comfortable in at all.
Oh, interesting.
And I really believe the main house was definitely the couple who donated it. They were absolutely still there.
Oh, wow.
It was exceptionally creepy.
Interesting.
Yeah. So whenever I would run an event, I used to do a Christmas camp there, and everyone had to sleep in the main house, of course, because it's the only one with power and heat.
Right.
I would move me and my family. We would stay in the nurse's hut, which was separate from the main building,
right,
but very, very close to it. It had power and heat, but also it wasn't in the main building. I hated sleeping in the main building.
Interesting.
Yeah. So definitely had my own weird ghost stories from camp, but not as a camper. I never went as a camper.
Huh.
We were immigrants. We didn't do that.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And we were
poor. And we were poor too.
We were poor, so we didn't do that.
We went camping as a family. My parents didn't ship us off.
Right. Well, I will say that really surprised me because, again, watching summer camp movies as a kid, I always thought it seemed really cool.
Yeah.
But I always thought it was something that just happened in movies.
Right.
Because I was consequently, because we didn't have money to go places, I was very much a homebody.
Right.
And so the idea of going somewhere without my family for 3 weeks seemed crazy to me.
Yes.
And but apparently this is a common thing.
Oh, they go for a month.
Yeah.
I remember having that same moment. I was in a ski resort in Vermont, and there's a family from Boston, and they had that thick Boston accent.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, it's real.
Yeah.
Because it was that same thing. You
Yep.
think it's just in movies. It was the weirdest thing. But I get that. And I always kind of thought camp would be fun to go to as a kid. But, I mean, my parents would send us to day camps.
Right.
Growing up. And they were pretty awful. It was like Lord of the Flies running through the woods.
Well, that's it. Because in my head, I always had this idea about, that's when you have your summer romance and the girl you never see again.
Right.
But growing up a fat kid, I think I would have just been eating shit for a month. Having rocks thrown at me.
Right.
And having people try and fuck with me for a month.
Wow.
Some insight into Brennan right there.
That is terrible.
It's okay, because now I'm the star, baby.
You are a big star.
That just ground to a halt like a body falling off a roller coaster. Fantastic.
Big star.
On that note, Luke found an incredible amount of summer camp stories.
Doesn't
for us.
surprise me.
I because I thought it was sort of a dead thing. I wasn't sure if we'd be able to find enough stories.
Aw.
But
Bless.
no, I'm so worldly. Tell you all about street crime in L.A., but something normal humans do?
No.
Not a clue.
No. That's funny.
But no, we have a ton of stuff, and I think bizarrely we're actually starting way far away from America, where most of these stories take place.
Yeah.
In the Philippines.
Cool.
And away we go. In 1988, I attended a summer camp during my second year of high school. I grew up in the Philippines, and the camp was 2 days' travel away from where we lived. The first night, we slept at a sister school in the town of Makati, and the next day headed for the port of Batangas, where we took a ferry boat to the island of Mindoro. I had never been so far away from home, and that makes what happened next even more unlikely. And I am probably getting a lot of these names wrong, so
no,
apologies.
you're saying it exactly the same way I would. So
well, that's not encouraging.
No, that's not.
Apologies to our Philippine listeners. More than 1 million people live on Mindoro now, but in 1988 it was much less developed, and the camp was outside Calapan, which is now a city but was then only a town. Even today, the road to the camp, which is now a seminary, is still unpaved, and in those days all around it was lush green forest and coconut trees. Once we arrived, camp assistants brought us to our dormitories, and for some reason I had a strong feeling that the place was familiar to me. That feeling grew stronger when I passed the room assigned to our rector, and I started thinking about things which were strange. As I said, it was the first time I had been to this island, so it is very strange for me to be experiencing déjà vu, and yet I was. Immediately I spoke with the rector, asking him about the strange things which were coming to my mind. I asked him if the land originally belonged to a wealthy couple that lived there before the Japanese War, and if they had a daughter. Also, I asked if the room he was using now was used as a clinic during the Japanese invasion. The rector looked at me straight in the eye and said all of that was true, then wanted to know how I knew. I explained the déjà vu I'd felt from the moment we entered the barracks, and also told him about the images in my head, which included the location of his room and a piano in the basement. The rector told me the seminary grounds had been donated to the church by the original owners when their daughter, an only child, died young. There was a piano in the basement. It was the one she used to play.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Kind of the same thing. The wealthy couple leave the land and it becomes a church camp. It's exactly the story.
Oh, there's another story in here, which is same thing. It's the actor who, and it's mentioned in the story, but it's the actor who played the grandfather in the original Parent Trap.
Oh, okay.
And part of his estate became a school and summer camp.
Very cool.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's sort of the way of a lot of things is,
Yeah.
All these huge parcels of land just end up smaller and smaller, and
Yeah.
some of them end up with, it annoys the shit out of me that churches get them, but, what do you
Not
gonna
so
do?
much anymore.
No, that's true. Getting back to Mindoro, it makes you wonder, is it a past life thing, or is it sort of a psychic, just sort of, picking up on things in the ether?
Yeah, and that's what happens to me. If that was me, I'd go there and I would get pictures of all that. But I
Right.
wouldn't know what it would mean.
Yeah.
So yeah, is it a past life or is it something trying to communicate? Who knows?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it's something. Obviously, I don't know. This is all the information I have, but
Yeah.
I just wonder if it's like you do, as I say, you pick up flashes of a place.
Right.
But I'm sure the standard explanation would be
Past life.
past life.
That's
yeah.
what I was assuming.
All right. So next up is one from New York State.
I'm not here to Hollywood things. I'm going to tell you what happened exactly as it happened. This summer, I worked at a camp on an island in Lake Ontario, New York. The old town hall had been converted to a theater in the 1950s and abandoned in the 1970s. So by now, it's lost to weeds and overgrown plants. Naturally, my friends and I decided to explore it. We did this several times, and each time we went back, something weird would happen. And so instead of just telling you everything, I'm going to tell you the 3 incidents that I witnessed firsthand and that I completely believe. Incident number 1. My friend Griff and I found a secret hatch that led under the stage, and as soon as we opened it, the temperature dropped drastically. All that was under the hatch was an enclosed room with a ton of spiders and damp ground. Nothing interesting. But while we were exploring it, we heard footsteps, loud and distinct, coming from way up above in the attic, which is the old bell tower. Number 2. While exploring the tower itself, I wanted to ring the bell, so I pushed my way towards it through a crawl space. The ceiling was broken in places, and I could see the auditorium below me, but I managed to get to a position where I could stand a bit. When I did, I saw a ball of light, gray in the middle, with a grayish light blue on the sides and a ring of white light around it. It looked like it had a 3-foot diameter. I'd never seen anything like it before. It started at the bell, which was 15 feet in front of me, and it zipped right past my leg. Every single one of my hairs was standing straight up at this point. The ball of light then zipped back towards the bell and disappeared when it was halfway there. It happened in seconds, but I remember it like yesterday. Incident number 3. My friend Kim can be a little superstitious, so I don't believe her all the time, but she's fun to explore with. Our 5th visit to the theater was our last, for reasons I'm about to explain. We were walking around, re-exploring things we'd already seen and scavenging for cool stuff to take home, old newspapers, whatever we could find. Kim kept talking about seeing a dark figure, but because of her dramatic streak, I would laugh it off. She only got more serious, though, and we ended up leaving because we were both freaked out. Later, I remember her talking about the shadow thing again, but still, I blew her off until we started going through the pictures we'd taken that day. 2 photos in particular stood out. I have no idea what they are. They could be a glare of some sort, I don't know. To me, it looks like a figure coming down the stairs in one, and in the other, the same figure is now somehow in the auditorium.
Now, the person in question included the photos, but I don't think they look like much to me. They just look like blurry photos with light coming through a room. I mean, I'm literally, I don't see anything there.
I can see something kind of on the right-hand side right where the cursor is. Yeah, that block. Yeah. Oh, it's a door.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I don't see it.
So, no, I'm not, I mean, this looks just like a light pattern. I'm not really seeing it, but that said, I mean, the stories itself are fascinating.
Yeah, no, it's great, and I love exploring stories. I don't want to fall to my death in an old building, so I tend not to do it, but I'm always interested in that kind of thing.
Oh,
I love seeing the pictures on the internet.
Oh, absolutely.
Urbex and stuff.
Yeah, we talked about that in Detroit.
Love it, love it, love it. Can't get enough.
There was, I think I might have mentioned this on a show before, there is an abandoned settlement outside Kamloops in BC.
Oh, yeah, you went on a tour, didn't you?
Well, there's that, too. That was in episode 18, we talked about the old asylum.
I can't believe you remember the name of the number of the episode. I'm so impressed.
It's almost like I'm the one who organizes all this
weird.
stuff.
Does all the editing and writing. So weird.
No. But, yeah, no, that was episode 18, The City by the Lake and Other Places to Die, which, if you haven't heard it, worth checking out, because that was a very cool tour. Mm-hmm. And the photos as well, I mean, both myself and Drunk in a Graveyard had some pretty solid shots. But
are they doing more tours there?
I believe they're doing tours regularly now.
Oh.
But I don't know for sure.
I would do a weekend thing and go check that
it'd be
out.
worth it. Yeah, no, it's just, because, again, they don't do ghost tours. They are adamant that it is not haunted.
No, of course they are.
But it's a fascinating place. But the place I was thinking of actually is a settlement. You can't get to it by road now. The company that owns the land has blocked it off. But it was a homestead of some description, which was bought, I believe, by a cattle company.
Oh, wow.
So the house is still there. The cars are still in the garage. There's a bulldozer in the barn.
Wow.
There's a lawnmower standing in tall grass. Everyone's gone. The houses are falling apart.
Weird.
Just fascinating.
And can you get there still? Just you got to walk in?
Yeah, I think you could walk in, and I imagine if you approached the company's head office in downtown Kamloops, I'm sure if you had some reasonable reason to be there, they'd probably let you be there.
Right.
But I mean, if you were caught, you were technically trespassing.
Right.
And we were trespassing when we went, but it wasn't blocked off at the time.
Right.
This was before. I think they realized people were going there, and so they wanted to stop it before vandalism happened. Because it was, surprisingly enough, the place wasn't trashed when we got there, my cousin and I. But had such a creepy vibe because Kamloops itself is in this old river valley, but it's desert. So the town itself has an unusual vibe, and then you get out to this little settlement, and it was so remote. You just feel like you're on the far side of the moon.
Wow.
And actually, funny enough, I have one picture, which is the sort of desert landscape.
Yeah.
But it's an off color, and there's one green ball next to the road. Every other picture is fine. And I've got 3 others from that set.
Yeah.
Just in one picture, there's this
the
green ball, and the colors are off.
Interesting.
So it could be a lens anomaly.
Yeah.
But given how strange that abandoned settlement felt,
Yeah.
it does make me wonder.
Ah, that's cool.
Yeah, so next up, actually, we have one that takes place not too far from us. When I was 17, I worked at a summer camp in Washington State, and I distinctly remember something that 2 of our kids said happened to them. Their names were Wyatt and Vivian, and they were not only charming little kids, but intelligent too. Their level of intelligence and maturity at their age was kind of shocking, and that's why I didn't doubt them when they came to me with their story. They came separately, their stories matched, and they were frightened, so I was even more inclined to believe them. According to the children, they had been playing marbles or some such similar game. I was 17 a long time ago. When they saw something alien, I don't necessarily mean an alien, but the way they described it, it feels alien, as in other. The creature walked on 2 legs, had pale pinkish skin, and yellow eyes, and a head that at first sounded like it resembled a bull terrier's, kind of triangular, but I eventually came to realize it sounded more like the characters from that old cartoon Spy vs. Spy, long and pointed, most definitely not human. Their description was fairly detailed, and as I said before, the kids were frightened, so I tended to believe them. Even so, I asked a fair number of questions to try and find a hole in their story. What's unusual is that my memory of that time and event is spotty. It's the oddest thing I've ever heard, but so much of it has faded from my memory. Of course, I lost touch with Wyatt and Vivian after the summer, so I don't know if they ever saw the creature again, but for their sake, I hope not.
Wow.
And that, I mean, that's it's not necessarily even cryptid. That's just creepy.
Yeah, that is creepy. And for them to see it separately and tell the same story separately,
yeah,
that's intense.
That kind of reminds me of the Los Angeles episode where that guy the 2 guys who woke up to find the weird, almost gray-looking things.
Yeah.
In their room.
Yeah.
I mean, these are a little bit different. These are more flesh-colored than gray, but same idea, and you wonder what the hell that is.
Yep. Something weird.
No kidding.
Until about a year ago, I attended a year-round daycare at Lewis and Clark College that also functioned as a summer camp. At the time this event occurred, I was 12, and being one of the older kids, had only about 2 friends my age at camp, David and Michael. Since all the other kids were at least 2 years younger than us, we ate in the large cluttered kitchen instead of the main room. One day while we were eating, the kitchen became noticeably colder for no apparent reason, and we all got goosebumps. Now, I've always believed in the supernatural, and my friends knew that, so of course they started teasing me about the temperature drop being caused by ghosts. After a couple of jokes, they got bored, and we moved on to another topic. Before long, it got even cooler in the room, and something strikingly white caught my eye to the right. I punched Michael in the arm, and we all watched as a translucent man walked by quickly, carrying what appeared to be some kind of cooking implement. He walked across the room without stopping, and then walked through the wall. Next door to the kitchen was a classroom, so we ran over there to see him again, but he was gone. We never saw the man again, but I always felt a presence near us while in the kitchen, and everyone, except for David and Michael, thought I was bonkers.
The white thing, that reminds me of the Detroit. There was that story about the kids in the new addition to the house.
Yep.
They had they saw a light in the closet, or they heard a voice from the closet, and then they investigated, there was nothing. But from the corner of their eye, they saw that white cloud thing dart.
Yeah.
And actually, when I was at Lizzie Borden house, once they started using the Ouija board, I seen white move out of the corner of my eye. It was like the air pressure changed.
Well, and we have better visual acuity at the corners of our eyes for evolutionary purposes.
I've read that there is ultraviolet sensitivity in the corners of your eyes.
We pick up more and we pick it up faster, and they call it COTEP, right? Corner of the eye phenomena.
Oh, okay.
It actually has a name because it happens so often.
Right.
So you'll catch something in the corner, and then what most people do is they turn to look. Of course, they don't see anything because you're using a different part of your eye, and you dismiss it.
Right.
But in these rare cases, you catch something in the corner of your eye, which makes you focus, and then if you're able to, or sometimes just because it's decided to let you see it, you can see full on.
Interesting.
I have never seen full on, ever. I would kind of like to. I'm also kind of a coward.
Oh, I would say it depends on what it is.
Very true.
Because after seeing those 3 shadow people full on, that was genuinely frightening.
No, I don't think I'd handle that well. I've felt them lots. I've heard them lots.
Right.
I've never seen in my full front acuity vision.
Which reminds me, something happened to a friend of mine that was full on.
Really?
Yeah, so we'll take just a quick break. I'll tell you about it. So my friend cleans houses, and they were cleaning a house out in Langford, which, for those of you who don't know, is a suburb of Victoria.
Yeah.
And they were all alone in the house. It was them and the dog.
Right.
They were cleaning the mirror. They looked up, and a woman's face is right over their shoulder.
Oh, shit.
Taller than them. No one else is home.
Right.
They flip around thinking, because they thought, oh, someone came home and I didn't hear them. So they turn around.
There's nobody there.
There's no one there except about 4 feet away from them is what they have described as the shape of a person, but looking like it's made out of opaque glass.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was again, it appeared to be a woman's frame, taller than them, but they said they've never seen anything like this.
Wow.
And it just slowly faded. But it was there. It was
I wonder what the history of the house is and stuff like that.
Well, that's the thing, because my friend and I were talking about this, and we talk about paranormal stuff fairly frequently.
Yeah.
And they've had experiences, but this didn't have a feeling attached to it. It was just all of a sudden this person's there. And that's like when I saw the shadows, because it wasn't like I feel gloom and then they're there. It was, holy shit, there's something there.
Boom.
And that's what this was like.
Wow.
You know, you're looking, oh, there's a person. There's not a person. There's a person made of glass. What the hell is happening?
Yeah.
And it's gone.
Holy.
Yeah. And they've since been back to that house to clean it. Hasn't happened again. But the dog didn't react. Nothing.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow.
So who knows? So this story is the one we referenced earlier when we talked about Charles Ruggles and land he used to own. This experience is something I've carried with me for quite some time. The summer camp I used to go to was organized through my former preschool. That school also held a kindergarten, and the building was the final remnant of a large estate originally owned by actor Charles Ruggles. If you've seen the original Parent Trap, he was the grandfather. Marion was the name of the woman who owned and operated the school. She was an incredible person, and I have only good memories of my experience there. At Easter, Marion would arrange for the Easter Bunny to come visit us, and at Halloween she would turn the entire basement into a witch's lair, where us kids could come down and make poison apples, really candy apples. Halloween was always really effective because she usually let her long black hair do whatever it liked, so it was pretty wild, and she also owned more sequined outfits than anyone I've ever known. Marion was a loving woman, but she was no pushover. If we misbehaved, we got timeouts, and we knew she disapproved. That hurt more than the timeouts, I think. Marion passed on when I was 7, but thankfully she left the school, summer camp, and everything to her daughter, who had worked at the school for a long time and wanted to continue her mother's legacy. Because of this, my parents signed me up for summer camp as they always had. Part of our instruction involved what the teachers called storytelling boards, and when they weren't in use, they were stored in the back room. One day that summer, while my friends and I were waiting to leave on a field trip, we decided to sneak into that back room and play with the storyboards. When the coast was clear, we opened the door, flicked on the lights, kids are such shits, and walked over to the farthest left-hand corner of the room where we climbed a bench to reach the storyboards on a high shelf. As my friend and I were reaching for the boxes, the lights went out, and we looked toward the door to tell our other friend to stop messing around. Marion, who we all knew had been dead for several months, was standing there. She was as solid as you and me, and seemed to be almost glowing, or at least creating her own light in the dim room. She wore one of her black sequin dresses, her hair wild, her hands on her hips, as she would normally do before telling someone off for misbehaving.
Wow.
My friend and I were frozen in fear. All we could do was stare. Finally, the friend who was supposed to have been watching the door screamed and bolted towards the other door, away from Marion. Once she did, the lights came back on and Marion was gone. Needless to say, my friend and I ran from that room as fast as we could and never looked back. I attended summer camp at this school until the age of 13 and never did see her again, but then I also made sure to behave myself.
You know, it reminds me of something that happened at the camp I was helping out in Alberta. We always had to sit in the gazebo between the boys' side of the camp and the girls' side of the camp.
Right.
And you'd usually have to sit there till 1 or 2 in the morning.
Why?
Because the boys or the girls would try and sneak over
of course
to visit each other.
That's amazing. So it really happened. That's nice.
It really did happen. So we would sit there and we would like, hey, you know, and then they'd freak out and run back to their cabins. But this was sort of an ongoing thing. You knew
Cops
this
and robbers
was part of it. Yeah. Until one year, it got really, really, really dry that summer. And we had coyotes coming into the camp and scratching at doors, looking for food, looking for water. And we told the kids this the first night of teen camp. We're like, just so you know, this is what's going on. So if you have to go to the bathroom at night, go with someone else, stick to the paths, don't go into the woods. We sat in the gazebo that first night. Nothing. Not one kid. No movement, no pranks, no nothing. By the second night, we realized, oh my God, these kids are scared of the coyotes. So then I just told that story every single year.
Really?
Yeah, I'm like, just so you know, coyotes, they're in the camp, so be careful. Never had to stay up late again.
Oh, that's amazing.
It was awesome.
I mean, it's a little disappointing because I just love the whole teenage stupidity part of that.
Yeah, but if you have to get up at like 6 a.m. and you're up until 2 and you have to do that 7 days a week.
Yeah, that's no good.
No.
I don't get up at 6 a.m. anyways.
No, I know. There is a 6 a.m. I don't know if you knew that.
That sounds like propaganda to me. Prove it. You don't have documentation.
But that reminded me of that. Something happened and she just never misbehaved again.
No.
That's awesome.
Funny enough, something that she mentioned as well kind of caught me is that the fact that Marion was giving off her own light.
Yeah.
There's a story I was told, unfortunately I can't repeat it, but that story does involve seeing someone who is not there and who was in fact deceased giving off her own glow in the moonlight.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's I don't know, it makes you wonder exactly what that is. All right. For this next one, we're going to Oregon, Illinois, and I find that confusing. I don't like the
that
U.S.
is.
It's like they ran out of names. It's like we have like 20 names by God, and we're going to use those. Those are good Christian names.
Yeah.
Anything else is the devil's work.
Well, it's like Paris, Ontario.
Yeah, Paris, Ontario. Paris,
London,
Texas.
Ontario.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No weird.
They even have a River Thames.
Really?
Yeah, I called it the town of the perfect ripoff. Because they had a Hyde Park, they had the River Thames.
Oh, that's brutal.
Oh, it was terrible.
So what egregious arrogance in Western culture. We completely ran roughshod over this land.
Yeah.
And instead of doing anything good with it, we just named it after all the awful shit we thought we left behind.
We left behind.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, I miss the terrible way things were back home. Let's create colonialism and bloodshed here and name it all the shit we left behind.
Perfect.
What a bunch of boobs. Anyways, please continue.
All right. My story takes place at White Pines Dude Ranch in Oregon, Illinois. I was 10 years old at the time and visiting the ranch with my Girl Scout troop. My best friend was also a member of this troop, and she was with me during the encounter. The Dude Ranch had a bunkhouse, mess hall, and pool, and for added scary effect, there was a graveyard right next to the pool. This was the summer that the original Poltergeist movie came out, and almost all of us had seen the movie. In fact, for most of us, it was the first horror movie we had ever seen in the theater. Those of us that hadn't seen it were still well aware of its famous pool scene.
Have you seen Poltergeist?
I have.
Okay.
It's one of I loved it. I thought it was brilliant.
It's a great movie, but what's funny is I believe that came out before the PG-13 rating was created. So
a lot of people saw the movie who shouldn't have seen the
correct.
movie.
I believe it was just rated PG because there was technically
no boobs,
no overt violence, no swearing. Yeah, I think that was 82, and I think the PG-13 rating came out in 84 for Temple of Doom.
Did you know that those skulls and bones in that movie turned out to be actual human skulls and bones?
No.
They cheaped out on props, and I don't remember where they got them from. I just read this a couple weeks ago. But the scene where they're in the water with all the skulls and the bones, those are real human
Good God.
bones. Yeah.
How is it that real bones are cheaper than fake bones? That's f***ed up.
I don't know. They wouldn't be now.
Well, no, but still, what an 80s thing.
I know.
It's cheaper to use dead people than fake people. Now let's do another fat rail of White Lightning. Jesus.
Anyways,
yes, back to White Pines Dude Ranch.
A cement walkway connected the bunkhouse to the mess hall, a distance of maybe a quarter mile. The walkway is surrounded by grassy fields with no trees to block the view. My friend and I were walking from the bunkhouse to the mess hall, enjoying the fresh air, when we heard footsteps behind us, seemingly walking the same direction as we were. The next part is a moment I will never forget. My friend and I casually turned to see who was behind us, expecting to see another one of our friends. To our shock, the sound of footsteps could still be very clearly heard advancing towards us, but no one was there. We slowly turned to face each other, and I could see my friend's eyes were wide in fear. We both screamed at the same time and started running for our lives. As we reached the mess hall, two of our friends jumped out from behind some barrels while shouting, "Boo!" We both screamed, then started laughing hysterically with relief. This wasn't quite the reaction the pranksters had expected. They looked at each other quizzically. We asked them how on earth were they able to produce those footsteps so far up the road. Our friends had no idea what we were talking about. It turned out jumping out at us had been the full extent of their prank. This was not my first paranormal experience, but it was the first one that I shared with another person. When something happens to one alone, even if one is a child, it's easy to chalk up the experience to an overactive imagination. When someone else is there to witness the event, it becomes a little harder to explain away.
Yeah, no kidding.
And we've talked about that.
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
When something happens with someone else, it's very hard to explain it away or ignore it.
Not for want of trying, though. Let
No.
me tell you.
Oh, God, no.
I just love that the kids had a prank set up. And then they were outdone by whoever it happened. Like, haha! Oh man, how'd you do those footsteps?
Oh, what now?
What?
Yeah,
that's well,
not great.
Not great.
No.
So this next one is I don't know where this one takes place. This one's a little more general. When I was 14, I went camping in the summer with the Girl Guides.
I bet you did.
Yeah, I can't do that anymore. 200 meters is not as close as you'd think.
Sorry.
When I was 14, I went camping in the summer with the Girl Guides. We only traveled a few miles away to a place we had visited a few times for game nights. Each year, our guides would merge with the two others in the area for a huge campout for around 5 days. The place we were staying in was rumored to have a ghost in the main house, the story being that it only showed itself to members of the family. We were staying on the large estate near the woods, a fair distance away from the house. I had been there quite a lot and knew the grounds well. I was staying in a tent with the younger girls, ranging from age 10 to 13, because I didn't have a tent of my own. The first day and night went smoothly. We built a climbing frame, lit candles in the dark, and played a game where we pretended to have landed on an alien planet. The next morning, me and one of the other girls got up early to collect firewood for breakfast, so we ventured into the woods on our own. We were joking around, grabbing wood as we walked, and ended up playing on the camp obstacle course, even though it was technically out of bounds. When we were done, we grabbed the firewood and started walking back to camp. The woods to me felt strange, and looked strange too. It was as if the place was slightly different somehow. I decided to try scaring the girl I was with, just messing around because it was fun. It worked, so she ran off and left me behind. While I was walking back, I saw movement to my left, then again up ahead. And as I was about to leave the woods, I saw, from the corner of my eye, there it is again, a man wearing a white t-shirt and cap carrying something long, maybe a shotgun. Then he was gone and no one was there. I'd seen stranger things, so I shrugged it off, and once I was out of the woods, everything went back to normal. I looked back, and the woods were as they should have been, not like they had been just a moment before. It's hard to explain, but they seemed newer somehow before, not so wild. And everything was misty, but without there being any mist around, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Grainy somehow. And I've experienced that in my old apartment building.
Yeah.
I used to describe it as like looking through smoke, but there is no smoke.
Yeah.
On the second last day of the campout, we played the Landing on an Alien Planet game. I was on my own building a pretty awesome shelter when I realized I'd left my penknife in the tent, so I went back for it. This kid is tougher than me.
Yeah, no kidding.
When I got there, the kids I'd been sharing with were crying their eyes out, terrified. The story I finally got out of them was that they had been making their food when they saw a man wearing a white shirt and cap, and he had appeared and disappeared right in front of them. I tried to tell them everything was fine and the man couldn't hurt them, but they were seriously shaken, and I got blamed for telling them a scary story. The thing is, I had only tried to scare one girl at the very start and had never mentioned the man to anyone.
Wow.
That night was a campfire, and as it ended, we all ran through the pitch-black woods back to camp, leaving the person looking after us all alone. Kids suck. She had a light, so I thought it was no big deal. She had to make sure the fire was out anyways. A week after that night, I found out something had happened on her way back to camp, and she has refused to camp at that site ever since, but won't tell anyone why.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'd be telling why.
I absolutely would, but,
Yeah.
but some people are weird about that.
I know.
Some
They
people
don't want to look like they're crazy, and again, if they acknowledge it and say it out loud,
It happened.
then it's real.
Yep.
Yeah.
The next morning, I was too excited by what had been going on to bother with packing. I was in a ghost hunting mood. So me and two other girls went into the woods.
Yeah, she's way braver than me.
Yeah. I was in the lead. Yeah, definitely braver.
Yep.
As we walked along the path, and when I stopped walking, I could hear footsteps in front of us. Specifically, footsteps on dead leaves. Except there were no leaves on the ground, and no one was walking anywhere near us. I followed the sounds, becoming sure it was someone who had heavy boots on. It was so strange because everyone at camp had trainers. The girls I was with could hear it as well. We followed the sounds to a clearing at the very edge of the woods where it stopped. I sat down at the edge of the clearing, and the other girls were behind me. They were scared. I did the whole, if anyone is here, can you give me a sign routine? And as I finished, a white mist suddenly fell over the woods. You could see things moving behind it, but nothing clear. It hung in the air as the other two girls ran off screaming. I sat for a minute and watched it before saying thank you. As I said this, it was like a gust of wind hit, and it was gone. There was no wind. It was just awesome.
Wow.
That was the last of the strange stuff for that camp. We had to finish packing up and left that afternoon. I've been back a few times since, and nothing strange has happened. The woods have always felt normal since then. A few years after that, I found out I am actually related to the family who own the house and estate. Since then, I've always been curious if the activity picked up because I was staying on the grounds. I gotta say, this kid kind of sounds both great and like a pain in the ass. Which I guess all teenage girls, it kind of describes them all.
Yeah.
But
no, I kind of like it, and I think the more time you spend there, the energy can get used to you as well, and then decide what it wants to do. So if you're going back for a day trip, nothing's really probably going to happen. But if you're there longer,
yeah, I guess 5 days is a long time to spend in a place like that.
It's a long time,
especially if she does mention she's had other paranormal experiences, so she's sensitive
and she's open to it.
So this next one is about Catholic summer camp, which that sounds awful. As a Catholic, I can say that.
Well, why though? Why would it be so different?
It's the church.
More Mary, more.
Well, I will say the Catholic Church doesn't have a great track record of taking care of children. Let's just say.
No, that's a good point. Only by the grace of God did that not happen.
Or well, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe he's on their side. It's hard to say.
Maybe.
But anyways, that's a bit heavy for our show. Back to Catholic summer camp.
For 9 summers, my parents sent me to a big Catholic summer camp in the Midwest. By my last summer, I'd become a junior counselor, as had all my friends who were also longtime campers. Nothing strange ever happened to us there. Until that final year. Our final year at camp happened to be the year the recession hit, meaning there was way fewer campers than in years past, and so many of the cabins were not in use. In our downtime, we were meant to keep those empty cabins clean and free of dust and debris. Me and another junior counselor, Ryan, were assigned to clean 2 cabins, Cabin C and Cabin D. Cabin D was the first one I ever stayed in at camp, and it was always said to be haunted, but I never had a single thing happen there. Even so, Ryan was nervous about it, so I volunteered to do it. Why didn't they just do it together?
Yeah. Kids are stupid.
Cabin D.
Because if we're Catholic and we make the job easier for us, then we have to feel guilty.
Oh, right. And then you don't get to do your penance.
Yeah, exactly.
Cabin D is one of the oldest, and so one of the smallest cabins at the camp. I think it's something like 80 years old, so I knew it would be a quick job. It was extremely cold in Cabin D, which suited me fine because it was hot as hell outside, with no wind. D was extremely dirty, so I got to sweeping, and after about 15 minutes, I heard what sounded like rustling. I figured it was the sound of a breeze starting up outside and ignored it. Then the screen doors on both sides of the cabin flung open and slammed shut. Wind or not, I dropped the broom in the middle of the floor and ran over to Ryan, who had watched the whole thing from Cabin C. We decided this was a good time to take a break and found other things to do around the camp. Later that night, one of the senior counselors asked me to go back and get the broom as they were in short supply and used everywhere. My friend Matt, another junior counselor, decided to join me for the walk. Now, I hadn't mentioned the slamming doors to him because he would probably have chickened out of the walk. When we got to Cabin D, we turned on our flashlights, opened the door to find the broom standing straight up on its bristles. Matt and I look at each other, and the broom falls to the ground. Matt wasn't all that bothered by this. He figured I'd left the broom like that to mess with him, as it's not all that hard to do. He grabbed the broom, we left, and as soon as we stepped out of one door, the other flew open and slammed shut, all on its own. We ran like hell.
There seems to be a commonality to these camp stories, and there's a lot of running like hell.
Oh, yeah.
Holy man.
Oh, yeah.
Yet another reason I wouldn't have done well at camp. Oh, hang on, Ghost.
Yeah. Oh, hold on. I'm not built for speed.
Give me a second. Yeah, that's right. I'm built for comfort, not for speed.
Oh, gross.
This is actually another screen door story, but there's a twist to it.
Okay.
2 twists, actually.
Ooh.
Yes, and some sweet cryptid action for the people who are into that.
I'll love it.
So this, the story begins, this is technically not paranormal, but still it was the most absolute terror I have ever experienced. It takes place at Ingham Lutheran Bible Camp, which is on West Okoboji Lake in Iowa. I was 10 years old at the time it happened. For whatever reason, the kids from our cabin, along with our counselor, were going to spend the night in the lounge room just off the dining hall. Early on in the night, we set up our pillows and sleeping bags on the floor there, then went outside for the campfire. The campfire was down the hill from the dining hall next to the lake. As we sat around the fire singing songs and reflecting on what we had learned that day, one of the camp counselors told us kids about the lake monster. Cliche, sure, but to sheltered Lutheran kids some 30 years ago, we bought it hook, line, and sinker. Nervously, we listened to the counselor tell the tale of some creature in the lake that comes out of the lake once every 60 years to take a kid, and of course that year the monster was due.
Oh!
The counselors changed the mood back to song and prayers, but the fright button had been primed. We finished with a campfire, and all of us started walking back to our cabins, or in our case, the lounge off the dining hall. It was very dark as we walked through the trees and up the hill, so we talked to each other to keep from being frightened. It worked until we heard a blood-curdling scream from behind us. The story of the lake monster came right back. Our counselor, sounding terrified, screamed for us to run. We sprinted as fast as we could in the dark through the trees up to the dining hall. Our counselor was right behind us and waited for every kid to get in before sliding the wooden doors closed. We were sure we were stuck. Either we'd be safely hidden in that lounge or we were going to die that night. We each huddled deep in our sleeping bags, trying to stay silent while fighting back fear and hyperventilation. For a minute or so there was complete silence, except for the sound of our racing hearts. The screen door to the dining hall crashed open, our terror redlined. I was shaking with fear. Pots and pans in the kitchen started banging, followed by a howl from some creature out in the dining hall. Only those old wooden sliding doors separated us from certain death. Again there was silence outside. Some kids were sobbing, our counselor shushing them. As I either fell asleep or passed out in fear, I don't know which, I could hear kids whimpering from across the room. We all awoke to comforting morning sunshine. The monster wasn't going to get us after all. Obviously, the whole thing was a put-on by the counselors. If it wasn't, the police would have been called. But even so, the fear I felt in my sleeping bag the night before was greater than anything I've ever felt since, and I've had actual paranormal experiences.
I had that same thing happen.
Really?
Grade 4 winter camp in Alberta, so it's snowy. The lake is frozen. And we were there in February, and they told us all about the fog monsters.
Oh, no.
Because fog would roll in off the lake
Of
every
course.
night with being winter and everything else. And we were absolutely convinced. And I remember knowing the difference between made-up stories and not, but being absolutely terrified. We all were. They actually had to have a camp meeting, and the teachers had to tell us that there weren't actually fog monsters.
Really?
We were okay. Yeah. Kids were crying.
Oh, wow.
No one would go anywhere alone. So it's that, I get that hysterical mass fear thing.
Yeah.
You prime them, and that's it. They're going to run with it, especially little kids. So that story, yeah, I was going, yep, I can see that happening.
What's great, though, is it turns out, and we did some digging into this, Lake Okoboji does actually have legends of a monster.
Oh, cool.
Going back way before white settlement.
Right.
So Iowa is historically inhabited by the Algonquin people.
Right.
There was the Mascoutin, the Souk, or the Sauk, the Kickapoo, which some evil son of a bitch named a soda after.
Oh, no.
Kickapoo Joy Juice.
Oh, no.
Yeah, my uncle used to talk about it all the time. So, do you remember Kickapoo Joy Juice? Nope. That sounds awful. These poor people, this is what you've reduced their culture to. A terrible soda. And there was the Meskwaki. I'm probably mispronouncing that, so please excuse me. The Meskwaki, though, specifically have legends of what they call the Nami Pashawa, or underwater panther.
Wow.
And the description given on nativelanguages.org describes the Nami Pashawa as a powerful mythological creature, something like a cross between a cougar and a dragon. I guess Nami Pashawa would sound better than Coogan. It's Steve Coogan. He's hitting on your daughter.
In a super sleazy way.
Of course. Well, is there any other way to hit on someone's daughter in front of them?
True.
It is a dangerous monster who lives in deep water and causes men and women to drown. And so Nami Pashiwa is said to live in West Okoboji, which runs as deep as 136 feet in some places.
Right.
And it's been described as having a head the size of a bowling ball with a long brownish-green kind of scaly body. And it sounds like folklore, which is fun. But then Luke found an actual encounter someone had with it in 2001.
Wow. Okay.
So this is that encounter. On June 23rd, 2001, my family and I were on vacation at Lake Okoboji in Iowa. We were at a small resort with a dock. I must make this clear first. Okoboji is a huge lake. This lake was naturally made thousands of years ago, 14,000, I looked it up, and is undoubtedly hundreds of feet deep, not true, and possibly hundreds of acres from shore to shore. Don't know about that. It's 3,800 surface acres.
Oh, wow.
Did look it up.
That is big, though.
Yes. And that's just West Okoboji Lake. There's also East Okoboji.
Oh, wow.
Anyways, that night my two children and I were sitting on the dock eating ice cream cones looking at the water. It was a calm evening, probably about 7:30, so it was still light outside, but just starting to get dark. The water was still like glass, with ripples only coming from passing boats, and they were just cheap little things. None of them came anywhere near close to us. My 13-year-old daughter nudged my arm and told me to look where she was pointing. I saw a spot in the water that was churning, almost creating a small whirlpool. Out of it, slowly and gracefully, rose a massive hump. Well, okay, it wasn't that big, but it was bigger than anything I wanted to see. It quickly moved about 2 to 3 feet and rapidly went back under the water. I remember it didn't have scales like a fish, but was more like a snake, or maybe had some kind of pattern that made it look like scales. But it was dark green or blue. I couldn't tell. We were kind of playfully freaked out while we waited for it to surface again, not at all thinking about our safety. Then we saw a head. A very good size oval or sphere, a bit bigger than a bowling ball, but not perfectly round. It was kind of oblong, like a lizard or a horse's head. The head rose further out of the water, and I could see it had the same pattern and color as the hump I'd previously seen. It swam very quickly. The only part of its body leaving a wake was its head, and I knew the creature must have been fairly big, so it would had to have had a fairly long neck for its body not to disturb the surface. It swam probably a dozen yards, then its mouth opened, like it was taking a gulp of air, then it went under.
Mm-hmm.
Just a split second later, I saw the same hump roll under the water, then the last part of its tail, which was fairly stumpy. My children and I were too dumbfounded to say or do much. Then we saw its head again, this time coming toward our dock.
Oh, no.
When it was about a foot away from the dock supports, the creature went back under the water. Just a second later, there was a huge bumping sound, and the dock shook violently for a few seconds.
Oh, my God.
We ran terrified back to the shore as fast as we could. Can you imagine?
No.
That is the worst thing. Water things scare the shit out of me.
Oh, me too. I don't swim very well.
No, same here.
As I've talked before, I'm convinced I will drown one day in a boat. So
I'm a land mammal.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't go in the ocean or lakes, or I will go in a river because I can see the bottom.
Right.
But yeah, no.
And see, as I explained in episode 10, we were trying to encourage people to check out the catalog, man.
Gotcha.
But we were the rivers around Revelstoke are very dangerous, so we were always told you don't go in the river. So the idea of playing in a river seems crazy to me.
I know.
But no, I don't like swimming, and I'm just fascinated by that because I don't believe in things like Nessie or the Ogopogo.
Yeah.
I don't, or Champ in Lake Champlain. I don't believe that they are sea creatures.
Right.
If they're anything, it's some kind of, like we've talked about Bigfoot possibly being a temporary manifestation.
Right.
That's what I think they are. And interestingly, the whirlpool thing kind of suggests that to me. Because it's almost
as if it's starting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like it's coming from somewhere. Like water's being displaced somehow.
Right.
I don't know if I mentioned this in my book, A Strange Little Place, available everywhere fine books are sold. But as I was saying, south of Revelstoke, there's a very paranormally active area called the Arrow Lakes.
Yes, I've heard of that.
And one of the things people have told me, or someone told me, someone I trust, and again, I can't remember if it's in the book or not, but they have seen a lake creature there. But they're one of the only people to have described that.
Right.
And so I don't think there's an actual lake creature, because the water isn't that deep.
Right.
I think it is a manifestation of, or just another manifestation of all the activity in that area.
Right.
The only ones that really interest me are the ones people don't like talking about. And there was a sea monster show I watched 10 years ago, and I've tried to find it since. I cannot find it. In fact, I thought I had found the program, but that segment was missing.
Oh,
so
wow.
It must have got it wrong, but it was a lake monster, but the locals didn't want to talk about it.
Ooh.
And that is fascinating.
I agree. That's the kind I want to hear about.
Yeah, when you've got merchandise, I'm less concerned. Yeah. You know, you got an economy to power. But when you got folks going, ain't no monorail and there never was. Then I want to know.
Absolutely.
So that is the story from Lake Okoboji. So that was a good find, Luke. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. This one is about horse camp.
During the summer when I was around 9 years old, I was allowed to stay a week or two at a horse riding camp. The kind where everyone gets to look after a horse while they're there. We stayed in rooms with bunk beds and closets, 4 to 8 girls per room. Thankfully, I was assigned to one of the smaller rooms and made fast friends with the other girls, 2 of whom were already 12 and 14 years old. During the cool summer nights, the 4 of us would sometimes huddle together and watch the lightning storms. One night, I don't remember exactly which, I woke up for no apparent reason and lay there a while, listening to the soft breathing of my roommates. Then, from behind a crack in the closet door, I see a flash of light. Once, twice. I was so scared I nearly wet the bed. The next morning, one of my roommates opens the closet and her camera was in there. I felt silly for being scared and relieved, but could never figure out why it went off all of a sudden like that, or why I happened to be awake to see it. I wonder if she ever developed those photos, and if so, what would they look like?
And that's interesting because, I mean, in this case, it was obviously a real camera flash.
Right.
But I'm pretty sure it was in Mothman Prophecies. John Keel talks about seeing phantom flashes at pivotal points in his life.
Really?
They look like camera flashes, but there's no source.
Interesting.
And I have seen them myself.
Wow.
Back in 2013, when I got the idea to go down to visit Texas and see my friend who lived down there, which started me on all these road trips, just before I made that decision, I saw a series of these flashes. The first one happened when I was actually going to see, God help me, a Riff Raff concert. And I assume you don't know who that is.
I actually do.
Oh, you do?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Well, I'm so sorry. It was one for the books.
Oh my
and
God.
not the good books.
No.
It was like shitty karaoke.
Yeah.
He literally, at one point, he drank from a bottle of Kettle One vodka and sang along to the Red Hot Chili Peppers' Scar Tissue.
That was part of the concert.
That was part of the concert.
Jesus.
It was spectacular in its mediocrity.
Where is he now, I wonder?
Well, hopefully at the bottom of the sea. No, I think he's still touring. He came through town again. I did not go. I declined to re-experience that. But
that's amazing.
But anyway, so my friend and I were walking to the show, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we saw up on this balcony, flash. We turned to look, because we both saw it.
Yeah.
I saw it as blue, they saw it as white, but we both saw it. We turned to look up at that at the balcony. There was no one standing there. And we thought, for a second, oh, well, maybe someone inside is taking a picture.
Right.
So we kept walking. Flash, again. Same place, look up. Curtains are closed.
Oh, wow.
Couldn't figure it out. So we went to see Riff Raff, and
Yeah.
that was slight faltering, but in a
Yeah.
wholly different way. Then 2 days later, I was at work in the office, which is the haunted office building.
Yeah.
Back when we were on the second floor, where the haunting is much stronger.
Right.
And I thought I heard paper rustling in my boss's office, and there was no one else in the building.
Right.
So I got up, looked, no one in there, went back to my desk, sat down. Then to my 10 o'clock in the conference room, flash, blue.
Wow.
So I thought maybe someone's outside taking pictures. It's the middle of the fucking day.
Yeah.
There's no way I would camera flash, but still.
Yeah.
I walked out there, no one out there.
Crazy.
Yeah. I mean, this is obviously there was a camera there.
Yeah.
But you wonder,
Yeah.
was it really?
Yeah.
Or did there just happen to be a camera there?
And what does it represent?
That too.
Yeah.
And I believe this person had one more story.
Something else happened. This one more scary than the other. Like I said before, some nights we would get together and watch the lightning storms. One night the girls from my room and a neighboring room were watching the forks coming down in the distance. The lightning wasn't just white or bluish, but green and purple, which scared us a little. Then
I've never seen green lightning.
No, green or purple lightning.
Yeah. Okay.
Then the older girls began asking weird questions to the sky, determining which answers were yes and which were no based on the color of the lightning. I don't remember which color meant what or everything they asked, but I do remember them asking if somebody or something was coming to visit us tonight. The answer was yes. The game was over when the smaller girls and me got too scared and the camp employees came in to do the goodnight check. Soon we were all asleep. A few hours later, somebody turned the lights in our room on, and I snapped awake. When I sat up, all the girls from the neighboring room and the camp leader were standing in our room looking worried. I felt like my heart skipped a few beats, even though I didn't know what was going on at first. One of the girls from next door then claimed I'd come into their room a couple minutes ago moving like a robot and stolen one of their blankets away. And believe it or not, there it was. The blanket was in my bed, and I was tucked up in it, tight. So tight they couldn't have snuck in and hid it on me. They said I was probably sleepwalking, and very scary, I actually came to believe I did sleepwalk to their room and took the bedding. But what bothered me was I'd never sleepwalked before, and never have since. It scared us all, and we talked a lot about it the next day when it was all sunny and nice outside again. The story had spread, and a lot of the girls in the camp were scared. None of us will ever get to know what was really going on that night, but maybe something did visit us. I just know that sleepwalking isn't me.
Huh.
And the fact that she was tucked into the bed?
Of course, yeah.
You can't tuck yourself in.
That's very true. Well, that reminds me of a story we were told about the hotel in Colorado.
Yes.
I can't remember the name.
Yeah.
But they woke up, and they were both tucked into bed super tight.
Yes.
Interesting.
That is interesting.
And actually, that reminds me of another story I heard years ago when I first started working on my book. That's a strange little place. Available everywhere fine books are sold. I heard about a house in the town of Vernon, or a condo in the town of Vernon, where someone I knew had experienced feeling someone near them.
Right.
So I just, apropos of nothing, I went to this house and knocked on the door to see who was living there. And the people who were living there looked, well, we'll say troubled. But they had experienced something. It wasn't the feeling of a person. They felt their pet, who was deceased, jumping up on the bed at night.
Mm-hmm.
And as we kept talking, the girl remembered another experience. And I could tell she was deeply troubled by this. She was living in a house in Prince George, BC. And she moved into this room. And for a reason she cannot understand, every night something would come over her. And she would feel herself compelled, she couldn't stop it, to pick up her bedding, take it downstairs, and sleep on the floor.
Whoa.
She was awake. She wasn't sleepwalking. What? She was aware. But something compelled her.
I'd be like, that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no. I'm out, bitch.
Wow.
But yeah, something would compel her to sleep downstairs. She eventually switched rooms and it stopped happening.
Really? It's like something just wandered her out of the room.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's hairy, eh?
That is intense.
Yikes.
Yeah, I'm not cool with that.
So next up, we have a trilogy of shadow stories.
Please.
These are always fun. About 10 years ago, I attended a local YMCA summer camp. At the time, I was 6, and there were a lot of kids at the camp my age, most of whom I got on with pretty well. One of the regular spots the counselors would bring us to was a nearby park, which had a large gazebo and flower garden with public restrooms just outside the fence. That sounds boring as hell. The kids and counselors always talked about the restrooms being haunted, but because they were outside the fence, we were not allowed to go in them without accompaniment. On this particular day at the park, the counselors told us we could do whatever we liked as long as we stayed inside the fence. But, of course, my friends and I wanted to check out the restrooms. We were afraid of being caught leaving the park and having some of our camp privileges taken away. So the plan was to quickly run over to the bathrooms when the counselors were not paying attention and slip inside. And it worked. We had all run so fast that by the time I got into the bathroom, I was gasping for air. By the time I caught my breath, my friends were already walking around, looking in stalls to see if anything was out of the ordinary, which is such a boy thing to do.
Yeah.
Just, there'll be something in the toilet maybe.
Yeah.
No. I stood in the corner by the sinks and mirrors. I can't explain why, but an eerie feeling slowly came over me. Something didn't feel right. Of course, it smelled horrible, but it was a public bathroom, so you can expect that. It was a large bathroom, too. There were about 10 stalls, and my friends checked all 10 without finding anything unusual. Before we left, my friend Chris used one of the stalls and then went across the room to wash his hands. While he did this, the rest of us were talking about how fake the bathroom legend was and what a ripoff the whole thing had been. Just then, Chris screamed. We turned to see him staring at something in the mirror, a look of absolute fright on his face. And in that mirror was a shadow in the shape of a man. We all sprinted out of the bathroom screaming and immediately told the counselors. They felt so bad about the state we were in, they didn't bother punishing us. I like to be scientific about things and try to find explanations, but I cannot explain this occurrence because no one was in the bathroom except for us. This is an experience I will never forget.
Wow.
This one's all you.
I went to a farm camp that had been running for around 70 years before losing its lease in 2014 and closing. Before it was a summer camp, it was just a big ranch that had been in the family for a couple generations. So this area had seen a lot of human activity for a long time. During the sessions, each cabin would get the chance to sleep outside in one of the big open areas. One year after my cabin had slept outside, I woke up just after sunrise before anyone else was awake. I was just about to climb out of my sleeping bag to fill my water bottle when the camp dogs woke up and started growling. I could see from the window they were growling in the direction of the footpath to the pig pen. There's not much over there apart from a line of skinny, dead-looking trees before an open field, so I couldn't figure out why they had their backs up. But then I saw it. Running up the path was a shadowy figure. It was tall, had pointed arms and legs, almost like a stick figure, and it almost seemed like it was running in slow motion, like it was being suspended by something and was making running motions as it was being pulled along. The dogs then ran towards it, barking, and as they got close, the thing disappeared behind one of the skinny trees. Needless to say, I didn't leave my sleeping bag until the rest of the girls in my cabin were up a little while later.
Yeah, no kidding. I think I'll just stay here forever.
Yeah, I'll just wait till there's people going over there by themselves.
Then go home. So this one's just a short one. When I was 12, I had a paranormal encounter at summer camp I'll never forget. During the night, I saw 3 shadows entering the room. 2 seemed to be looking around with no real intention, but the third was wearing a hat, and I felt he was malevolent. One of the more harmless-seeming ones was climbing on the bunk bed in front of me. It was so dark I thought it may have been my imagination, and for some reason I went back to sleep. which we've talked about many
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
In the morning, I didn't say anything, but the girl sleeping on the bunk bed in front of me said, "Hey, I kind of saw a human-like shadow thing climbing on my bed last night, and I almost shit my pants."
That's a great way to end that
Yeah,
story.
I don't think, that's just gets the point right across.
No kidding.
All right, and finally, take it away.
For about 7 summers while I was growing up, I stayed and sometimes worked at a camp in the Adirondacks. I loved the place, but there were parts of it that creeped me out. There was a main building plus 2 camp units. They were like small cabins, but with one wall that was completely screened. The unit I was staying in was called Trail's End, and the other was Cimarron. Cimarron had problems. One year when I was a counselor in training, one hell of a storm hit, and Cimarron was the closest cabin, so we holed up in there. It was me, my campmates, and our substitute counselor huddled in the dining area. The walls were screened, so they weren't great protection from the elements, but at least we weren't standing in the rain. The whole time, we felt like someone was watching us, and even after the storm ended, we stayed there out of fear and anxiety until someone came to find us. Years later, after I'd become a counselor, I was doing something in Cimarron, I don't remember what, and one of the girls came over saying a campmate needed help. We had 2 major rules of the camp: no running, and you have to have a buddy, particularly at night, which this was. The girl said she couldn't get a buddy to go with her, so she ran. She tried to run back once we talked, but it was dark and she could easily trip, so I stopped her. I asked her why she was walking so fast. She said she felt like something was watching her and following not far behind. I got chills. I looked around to make sure nothing was watching or following us, and all I could see were the tall trees fading into the night. There was no way I could have guessed what was coming. One night, a couple of weeks later, we had finally gotten the campers quiet and into bed. I went back to Trail's End and started to climb into my bunk when I heard a small girl's voice say, like she was about to ask a question. Startled, I turned, and 2 of my coworkers who had heard it also looked. There were no flashlights, no campers, nothing. We hadn't heard anyone approach, and with all the dried leaves everywhere, we would have heard something, but no. The 3 of us looked at one another, and one of my coworkers said, "We're going to pretend that was my stomach and go to sleep." We agreed. At breakfast the next morning, the staff from Cimarron were talking amongst themselves. When we asked what was wrong, they told us that after lights out, the night had gotten weird fast. The staff in Cimarron that year were some of the most level-headed staff I saw come through that place. They didn't mess around and were vocal about there being no such thing as ghosts. So to hear the story from them shook me hard. They told us that all night a voice had been circling their cabin saying, "Hey." It would come from the left, then the right, then another location. They didn't hear footsteps. Like I said, you'd hear those. And the voice itself was gender neutral, but hoarse and rough. It got so bad they called 3 senior admin staff over, and all of them were even more no bullshit than the staff of Cimarron. They stayed for about 10 minutes before saying, "I'm not making this up. You're on your own," and bailing. No one stayed in Cimarron the rest of the summer. Some of the kids and staff doubled up with us in Trail's End. The rest stayed in the main building. No one was going back in there.
Huh. Hearing a voice in the woods at night may be the worst thing ever.
Well, because there's nowhere to run away from.
Oh, yeah, you're completely alone in a foreign element.
Yeah.
That's as bad as a sea creature, but for different reasons.
Yeah, exactly.
Holy man.
Yeah, and I remember there being, that story brought back memories for me, because at the camp I was talking about on Thetis Island, there was a beach where one of the girls who was a lifeguard had drowned a number of years earlier, 1960s, 1970s.
And this had actually happened.
This had actually happened.
Oh, okay.
There was a tree planted for her, but they had to plant it every year because the tree kept dying.
Yikes.
Yeah. And we would go there on one particular day of camp. We would have this sort of picnic lunch.
Right.
And everyone would grab a lunch bag and a drink, and that was the trail. We would go to this, it's called Godiva's Beach. And no one ever went there any other time. And it was beautiful. But no one, in the 9 years I worked for that church, I never saw anyone go there other than that group activity.
Really?
Yeah. Everyone went to this other beach, but no one would cross almost this imaginary line. No one went there.
Like some kind of natural instinct just kept you away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
And when we would play night games, even though the land was massive, people would only play on the right side of the camp. They wouldn't go on the left side.
That's so interesting.
It was so weird. Yeah.
It's like there's some, deep down, there's some part of us that just knows better.
Well, and I think the longer you're in nature, it's like when you get there, you're kind of stumbling over roots and rocks, but within 24 hours, your body adapts, your muscles adapt, you find your way. And I think it's the same thing. I think instinctually, you connect to whatever's there, and you know that okay, this part's a no-go.
Right.
It's really interesting.
That is.
Yeah.
Well, after all this, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to summer camp ever. I might just go back to watching that movie Summer Camp, which we started before the show.
That looked terrible.
It sure did, but it's better than Ghosts. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with some listener mail.
No one smiles at the Cuban restaurant. When I hold your hand, we get weird looks. I hope we're the last facts these old fuckers will ever see as they sink into their pocket tombs alone. There's a place on the beach with $8 Bud Light limes. I drain my bank account as I hope to die. Ooh. And when I'm good and drunk, face hits the sand. Some fountain of youth, some promised land.
Welcome back. Thanks again, as always, to our researcher, Luke Greensmith, for giving us, again, way more stories than we could ever use, which is amazing.
Ever since we brought Luke on,
Yeah.
it's been fantastic because we have been able to do so much more.
Yeah.
And writing the show has become so much less stressful.
Yeah.
This one I stressed a bit in the beginning.
Right.
Because
But
I
you
had,
always stress.
Yeah, well, I stressed more than usual because I was trying to make it too much.
Right.
Because, again, I had all these grand ideas about what summer camp is in my head. And I thought, we got to encompass all. And then I just thought, no, this is stupid. Okay. My friend told me, you're being stupid.
So thank you to Luke for all that.
Thank you, Luke. If you want to get in touch with him, you can find him on Twitter at Luke Greensmith. You can also find him on Tumblr at lukegreensmith.tumblr.com. Moving on, it's time for some listener mail.
Our courteous and efficient staff is on call 24 hours a day to serve all your supernatural elimination needs.
We're ready to believe you.
Our first email is from William, who emailed us before, or Bill, I guess, Bill. And he was telling us that we should book a few nights aboard the Queen Mary. Well, of course, I have stayed there one night, and I took my mother there. And now she is eager to go back for another couple.
That's awesome.
So it's just a race between whether or not me or Ian gets there first. Next up, we had some messages from Teresa. And Teresa, of course, runs the Peculiar Mayhem podcast. And Teresa's great. She sent me an email, actually, at my largethetruth@gmail account.
Right.
And I just found it because no one ever emails me there.
Right.
I do say on my radio show if you want to request a song, but no one ever does.
Right.
So I never check it. So, Teresa, I just got your email, and I will get back to you shortly. Of course, we had an email from Casey, and Casey wanted to know where she could send a shirt to be signed, which was pretty cool. She bought a shirt from our Threadless store, and now she's going to send it to us for us to autograph it.
Cool.
Which was pretty cool. So we do have an official Ghost Story Guys mailing address.
Excellent.
So if for some reason you've got something you want us to sign, power of attorney papers or merchandise.
Red Lobster gift cards.
Oh, God. Yeah. Or that. Email us at ghoststoryguys@gmail.com, and we'll give you the mailing address.
Perfect.
We had an email from Lindsay, who heard our episode on road trip stories and had a story from Texas. So thank you, Lindsay. We will make sure to share that. And Tori got back to us. Tori, who, of course, will be on our bonus episode, which should be out, I'm hoping, next week.
Perfect.
I'm just waiting on some music for that. We're going to try some different stuff. But Tori said, you're fueling my dreams of having my own podcast. And Tori, I would listen to that.
She should.
Yep,
yeah,
100%.
she really should.
We will be your first guest.
Absolutely.
So we had stories from Caleb and Melanie. Thank you both for sharing those. And I think we've got enough for a listener stories episode coming up.
Yeah,
so we're going to
do.
have to do that pretty soon here.
Yeah.
We also had messages from Melanie, who's other Melanie, or Melanie 1, Melanie 2. It's hard to – there's a surprising number of Melanies. We also had an email from Trish, who lives in Detroit. And that was kind of cool. She said Detroit's not as bad as it's made out to be. She actually works seasonally at the Opera House downtown. And she said it's when you get to the outskirts that things get scary.
Yeah.
And
I could see that.
Absolutely. She wonders if Michigan is maybe a little more paranormally charged because of all the water. And could very well be.
Makes sense.
We had a couple great emails from Flo for the Dream episode.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about some of those on the last episode, and she sent more. So thank you so much, Flo. That's fantastic. Rin sent in a story, and actually the story she told, I don't know if I mentioned this to you when I replied to you, Rin, but your story, I did mention that your story is similar to what happened to my friend. I don't know if I mentioned that story came in on the same day it happened to my friend.
Oh, wow.
So talk about timing.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Kathy, who bought our books.
Yes.
Yes, she said that if we're ever in Maryland, we should come by. And Kathy, actually Teresa said that too, if we're ever in Chicago, come by. Now,
It sounds like we need to do the Ghost Story Guys North American tour.
Yeah, that's right.
Just like, and it would consist of us basically showing up and sleeping in your house and then leaving the next morning without making any kind of beds or anything.
Having swiped some food from the fridge, used up all the hot water.
And possibly some of your prize mementos.
That's right. The Ghost Story Guys Larceny World Tour.
Yes.
Well, we got to pay for the gas somehow, right?
Somehow, yeah. Hey, you're not using that iPad right now.
Yoink.
Yoink.
It must have been the spirits.
Zip, zip.
But thank you, Kathy. And again, we're ever out that way, we will look you up. Have you ever been to Maryland?
I have. I took a ship out of Baltimore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, cruise ship. Yeah. It's kind of a murdery town.
Yeah, Baltimore can be a scary place.
Yeah.
I have never been to Baltimore, but I met this really great couple on the train once, the train from Chicago to New Orleans.
Cool.
Bill and Frank. And who is it? Bill? No, Frank worked for Amtrak.
Right.
So they got the free travel, and they had the huge sleeper room.
Nice.
I was in the little roomette by myself.
Yeah.
So, and they had great taste in rum.
Yeah.
So they would have me back to their room for rum, and oh man, we hung out in New Orleans. Great people.
Yeah. Awesome.
So that's the extent of my involvement with Baltimore.
Yeah.
But I have been to Maryland briefly. There was one of the worst truck stops I've ever seen. One bathroom stall had been destroyed.
Right.
I don't want to know by what.
No.
And the most noteworthy feature apart from that is a giant cauldron of boiling peanuts.
What?
Yeah, because boiled peanuts are a thing.
Yeah.
Well, this was a giant soup tureen, but full of boiling peanuts.
Creepy.
Yeah, that was my experience in Baltimore.
Sounds
or Maryland,
great.
rather.
Sounds amazing.
I'm sure it's not representative of your great state, Kathy. And funny enough, while we're on the subject, Kathy bought some autographed books from us, and we now have a store set up for that.
Good job, Brennan.
Thank you.
Woo!
So we will post a link to that, maybe pin a post somewhere. It's on our Facebook page right now. It's an Etsy store, which is not optimal because Etsy is primarily for handmade goods. So, again, that link is on our Facebook page. I looked around. I tried Shopify. Shopify actually wants you to pay.
What?
$30 a month, man.
We don't have any money. We don't make
No,
any money.
No, I know. I mean, we made, I think, total $10 each from those book sales.
Woohoo!
So and that's Canadian, not American.
Yeah.
No, so
That's funny.
Yeah, so we do have the Etsy store, and eventually we'll have that set up so you can buy some stickers from us, and maybe we'll figure out a way for our Canadian customers to be able to buy shirts from there, because I know buying shirts from the Threadless store for Canadians is a nightmare.
It's really expensive.
Yeah, my friend, a friend of mine back in Revelstoke told me the horrible ordeal that happened when she tried to order a shirt because the shirt got lost.
Oh no!
And then turned up months later.
Oh
no! Oh yeah, it was just the whole thing. So we're hoping to get something going for our Canadian listeners because we sure appreciate you folks.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as we figure that out, we'll let you know. But in the meantime, you can buy Ghost Story Guys signed copies of Strange Little Place and whatever the hell your book is called.
Victoria's Most Haunted.
Sure.
Yeah.
From our Etsy store. All right. And we had 2 more emails. One from Tiffany, who is very complimentary. She says she's a longtime Art Bell listener, and it's like we've both filled some of that spot for her.
That's a huge compliment.
That is a huge compliment.
Yeah.
I was actually on his show back in 2016. And you were too, actually.
Yeah.
Midnight in the Desert.
Yeah.
With Heather. And that was pretty cool. Being able to say I was on, even though Art wasn't interviewing us, Heather's a great, very cool person.
Yeah.
And being interviewed by her was great.
Yeah.
And being able to say we were on Art's show.
Yep.
Of course, I don't know if you're aware of all the shit that's happened with that show. No? Okay, so we'll talk about that off air.
2 other things. I wanted to do a shout out to the RCMP in West Shore here in our area.
Oh, yes.
For being listeners and for enjoying it. It's filtered back to me through friends, so I just wanted to say hi to them.
Oh, cool. That's very cool.
And the other thing, my friend Steven works at St. John Regional Hospital. Thanks for paying attention, buddy. You're doing a good job.
And we were recently looking at the stats. We have, for some reason, somehow, seen a big uptick in our listenership among the armed forces.
Yeah.
The American Armed Forces. I don't know how or why, but hey, guys, thanks for listening.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you have any stories you want to share, we'd love to hear it. I know I've been slowly collecting stories from the Middle East, ghost stories. And so if anyone, there are not many at the moment, they're hard to find, but if anyone out there has any stories, we would love to hear them. Send them to ghoststoryguys@gmail.com.
Perfect.
Finally, we had an email from Deborah, and Deborah says that in the late 90s, her family lived in Ohio, and she had a good job working for a company which was headquartered in Southfield, Michigan, near Detroit. She had to attend some function at home office, and while they were looking around the lobby of the hotel, they realized there were several cops standing around watching people at all times. And the shopping plaza across the street always had 4 or 5 police vehicles parked there too. And they decided they didn't need to spend that much time shopping after all.
Good call.
But there was one souvenir T-shirt that caught her eye, and she didn't buy it, and I wish she had, or I wish I had seen it. But the front of the shirt said, "Welcome to Detroit. Sorry we missed you," with a pistol pointed outward at you. Man. She also says in regard to Florida, a couple days ago I scrolled past a post on Facebook that said, "Drunken man in Florida kills imaginary friend, turns himself into authorities."
Perfect.
What a great state.
That's Florida.
The Florida episode, well, I don't know.
Oh, man.
That's going to be magical.
Yeah.
Speaking of Florida, our featured song in this episode was
If I Ever Get Out of Florida.
by Just Fern.
So cool.
We love that song. You can find her at justfern.bandcamp.com. The album is Feminology, and I really recommend you pick it up. It is so much fun. It's just a great album, and I think it's only $7 or something.
Nice.
It's very cheap.
Nice.
And even if it's 10, it's absolutely worth it to support an independent artist. I found Fern while researching, I think I mentioned Pittsburgh show for my radio show, and Pittsburgh has some really great bands.
Cool.
Really, I won't say undiscovered because they play around the area.
Yeah.
But people who, they have fewer than 1,000 plays on Spotify, and I think you guys are crazy talented.
That's awesome.
So I'm looking forward to doing that episode of my show. I guess that's going to do it for listener mail.
Yeah.
In 3 weeks, we'll be making our first appearance at the Sydney Market.
Sydney Night Market.
Yeah, Sydney Night Market. So that's June 14th, the Thursday, at 7 p.m., right?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And that's just north of Victoria. So if you're in the area, come and say hi. We'll sell you a copy of our book. And, well, I don't know. I might not be able to sell mine.
Well, maybe we can photocopy some and you can staple them together and sign that.
Sell PDF copies. Oh, man. Having a small print run sucks.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, we'll be there hanging out. Come by and say hi and shake our hands. And I don't know.
Barbara Smith will be there.
Of course, Barbara
She's
Smith,
amazing.
the very talented ghost story lady.
Yep.
Who we will be having in studio at some point in the future
Yes.
when her new book comes out. I believe that's in the fall.
Yeah, it's coming. Well, yeah, maybe sooner. I don't know.
Either way, looking forward to having Barbara in
Definitely.
the studio. So, yep, come check us out at the Sydney Night Market. You, of course, are still doing ghost walks
I am.
every Thursday.
Every Thursday and a few Saturdays, and it's going to pick up in June. I think I've got about 12 dates scheduled in June. So
Okay, yeah. So if you can check the schedule at ghostlywalks.com, and if you want to make sure Ian will be working on the night you go, if you happen to be in Victoria, email us again at ghoststoryguys@gmail.com, and we'll make sure to get back to you. If for some reason you want to hear more of my voice, I do a weekly music show on 92.5 StokeFM. That show is Largely the Truth, and you can hear that on Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Pacific, either on 92.5 StokeFM if you're in the local broadcast area, which I very much doubt, or on the web at stokefm.com. And it's looking like I will be live on air on Tuesday. Let me just have a quick look here. Okay, so on Tuesday, June 5th, rather, I will probably be live on Revelstoke Jim's Canadian content from 8 to 10 p.m. So you'll be able to tweet at us live on air. We'll talk back at you.
that's cool.
Oh, it's great. I love live radio, man.
Yeah,
I miss live radio.
That's great.
So you can put it on your calendar and harass me on air. It'll be fun. We'll play some of Jim's tunes and just have a good old time. Of course, if you want to get some Ghost Story Guys merch, you can find our store at ghoststoryguys.threadless.com. We have T-shirts, and we do have some stickers on Teespring, but we don't have a direct link to that.
Okay.
So very helpful. But we'll figure something out. And if you do buy something, we will happily send you 2 Ghost Story Guys stickers as a thank you. Just make sure to forward your receipt to us and let us know you want them. Of course, if you want unsigned copies of our books, you can find those on Amazon. Ian's is, of course, Victoria's Most Haunted. Mine
My God.
Damn it. Mine's A Strange Little Place, and I believe they're relatively cheap, and you're helping support a good cause, namely my chicken wing habit and whatever the hell it is he does with his money. Is there anything else?
I don't think so. Just got to thank everybody.
Right? Thanks as always to Podzontommusic for his lovely intro and outro music. You can find him online at soundcloud.com/Podzontommusic. Peter just got back from a vacation to Italy, and it looked incredible.
Nice.
Oh, the lucky bastard. Thanks again to Luke Greensmith. You can find him on Twitter at Luke Greensmith and on Tumblr at lukegreensmith.tumblr.com. And I guess that's going to do it.
Cool.
We'll be back in 2 weeks with another show, and until then,
into the darkness we go.
And if I ever get out of Florida, sunburned and tanned, I'll carry you home if I can still stand.
then your real estate agent asked what I do for a living. Hey, yachi machi.
That was so funny.
Well,
we just talked about that.
yeah, I don't know. I've somehow gotten just in the habit of eating over the sink when I'm by myself.
I sit on the couch.
We do that for dinner.
Oh, when you're all fancy.
Yeah, we put on my top and tails. But usually if it's just me, I just eat over the sink. I know.
I've done that in a hurry, but no, I like to sit down.
Like a grown-up with grace and dignity. Yeah. You know?
Well, I warned her. I said, look, I'm coming out at the end of July. You better have your stamina up.
Right. That sounds weird.
Yeah. Thanks for making that creepy.
I regret everything.
Yes.
Well. Before we started recording tonight, Ian and I watched a few minutes of the movie Summer Camp, and we happened to have the microphones on while we were doing it, so this final outtake is a couple selections from the 10 minutes we spent watching that horrible, horrible movie. Hope you like it. Thanks for listening.
Like, you want to watch the whole thing?
No, I just want to see, just kind of flip through it and see if it's as... Okay, yeah, so it looks as cheap shit as I thought it would.
Hold on, just let's see.
Oh.
Holy, this is bad.
This looks like it was shot on dinner plates.
In the 70s. It looks like a porn.
Yeah, it does.
This is terrible editing.
I think it's just one terrible thing amidst the sea of them.
I think there's only one camera.
There is 100% only one camera.
The cameraman's shadow.
That's fantastic.
Oh, the boom man. The boom man's shadow.
Holy shit.
Music by Sparky Sugarman. That's my new name.
Sparky
That's my new music.
Sugarman.
My new music name.
I love how everything in this is so mediocre they don't even know how to cook food.
No.
They don't know
She's
how
just
to
hacking up a piece of meat.
They don't know how to do any part of this.
No.
I was literally there going in for a kiss there.
Yeah, I thought they were too.
You're gonna find a way to call me horse. In Soviet Russia, horse rides you.
At the end of the movie, he'll strike oil. Camp is saved. Orgy ensues. The end.